trying to live a fulfilled life by challenging myself.
Ever since Florida Georgia Line split up, Brian Kelley has seemingly been struggling to get his feet off the ground. Although he has released several new songs as a solo artist, he hasn't managed to sell out any kind of large venues for his music. And there still seems to be some kind of beef between him and Tyler Hubbard, who Brian's wife even clapped back at on social media. Here's what happened to Brian. Florida Georgia Line was a wildly successful group that released some of the most famous country songs of the last decade. But sadly, after 10 years of making music together, Brian and Tyler parted ways, ending the band once and for all. The two of them played their last show in August of 2022, and then they both set out to start solo careers. For a while, they were pretty quiet about why they had chosen to go their separate ways. But now, Brian is spilling the tea about what really happened. In September of 2023, Brian responded to a comment on social media saying that Florida Georgia Line would definitely not be coming back. And if they ever did, it would be years before something like that would happen. For the longest time, people hoped that the two of them would reconcile and come back together to make music once again. But now it seems like that's just not going to happen. In his comment, Brian said that getting back together with Tyler wasn't even on his radar, and it definitely wasn't on Tyler's either. He also made sure to double down on the fact that he was pursuing a solo career, and that was all he wanted to think about. Brian has also done a bunch of interviews about the real reason why Florida Georgia Line split up. He said that from the very beginning of their partnership, Brian made it clear to Tyler that he needed to have an extra outlet to honor his artistry, which he claims was the entire goal of moving to Nashville to make his music in the first place. He said that he always had the intention of both being in Florida Georgia Line and doing his own solo work. Brian made sure to emphasize the fact that he never wanted the band to split up in the first place, and that it was really Tyler who ended things once and for all. He thought that it would be possible for them both to have solo careers on top of their partnership in the band, but he said that it obviously didn't happen. He claimed that even when they announced the band would be taking a breather, he was still working behind the scenes to find a solution that would make everyone happy, and that would be able to keep him and Tyler together and still create music. But he said that at the last show he realized there was no way the two of them were ever going to come to an agreement, so he had to be okay with it. He broke down the timeline in even more detail when he was on the radio show The Bull with Moot, Kimmy, and Otis. He said that the pandemic in 2020 was difficult for them, but he assumed they would move forward with their solo careers and the band after restrictions were lifted. This was also around the same time that Brian was writing Sunshine State of Mind, his first solo album. Of course, with the pandemic forcing them to be physically separated and unable to play shows, the idea of a solo career was even more clear to Brian than ever before. And with his newly released solo music, he was able to climb the charts with some immediate success. As of now, Brian and Tyler are working on their solo careers, with Tyler achieving 2 #1 singles. But despite Tyler becoming more successful in his solo career than Brian has said that he won't let that get in his way. Brian said that he expects Tyler to have hit songs on the radio like that, and it's all good competition. But at the end of the day, he said the only real competition he has is with himself, and he doesn't really want to bother himself with what Tyler has been doing. His wife, on the other hand, provided a little bit more insight into what some of the behind-the-scenes feelings might be surrounding this issue. In an Instagram caption, Brittany Kelley wrote about how their lives changed during and after the pandemic. She said that after years of burning up the road, the world shut down, and the people they once called family canceled them. She said that she and Brian found themselves breaking the mold and playing more intimate shows rather than big ones, and that their minds were blown after a total of 28 shows, with each night being even more incredible than the last. She wrote about how they were surrounded by amazing and supportive people, and she finished off her caption by saying they would be forever grateful for the path they were forced to take, even though it was confusing and heartbreaking at times. Her post was incredibly telling, especially since she mentioned that immediately after the pandemic, the people who they once called family canceled them. Many people believe that she was referring to Tyler and his wife, since they have all known each other for the better part of a decade. It is very clear that they are no longer friendly with each other like they once were. She also was very careful to use the word canceled in her posts, which is an interesting buzzword that almost completely takes away any blame off of her and Brian. It makes it seem like Tyler and his wife are really the ones who outed her and Brian, all because he wanted to have both a solo career and the band. But her post has been somewhat controversial, as many people believe that it was really Brian that broke up the band in the first place. The idea that Brian told Tyler from the very beginning that he would want a solo career is just something that has to be taken at face value. And even though Tyler hasn't come out against it, that doesn't mean that Brian's comments are true either. At the time of their disbandment, Florida Georgia Line had several commitments that Brian was seemingly no longer willing to, and in many ways it seems like Brian was unwilling to give up his solo career, and he ultimately forced Tyler's hand to end their partnership. The idea of Tyler and Brian having solo careers on top of the band also seems almost impossible to achieve, since both careers would have taken a huge amount of work. There's no way they would both be able to juggle double careers and still give their 100%. There's a high chance that Brian decided that Florida Georgia Line would be a much lower priority for him, even if he was willing to stay. And Tyler probably didn't want that, because it would mean that he would have to shoulder nearly the entire weight of the band just so Brian could go off and have a solo career. While Tyler hasn't been as forthcoming about the split as Brian, there's a good chance that something like that went down. And since there also appears to be a lot of hurt feelings in all this, like how Brittany said they were forced down a heartbreak in an unexpected path, it's clear that there are still a lot of things that we don't know about when it comes to this split. But what do you guys think about all this? Do you think that Brian was the one who split up the band, or was it Tyler? Do you think it would have been possible for both of them to have solo careers on top of their partnership, or do you think it would have been way too much for them to handle? I would love to hear what you have to say about this one, so let me know what you think in the comments below.